"Can I pray for you?" asked the homeless girl to the rich man's son crying in the hospital. Michael Thompson was lost in his own despair, feeling as though his life had completely fallen apart. 3 weeks earlier, his wife Jennifer had slipped into a deep coma after an accident no one could properly explain, and the doctors at Mercy Medical Center, the most expensive hospital in New York City, seemed to grow more pessimistic with each passing day. It was then that a soft little voice interrupted his dark thoughts in the icy hospital hallway. Ethan, his 11-year-old son, was curled up in one of the waiting room chairs, his face swollen from crying. A girl with curly hair and worn-out clothes approached him cautiously. "Can I pray for you?" asked Emily Grace, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan lifted his reddened eyes and glared at her angrily. "Go away! I don't need your charity," he shouted, causing several people to turn and look. The girl didn't move. Her dark eyes held a sadness that seemed far too old for a 12-year-old. "I don't want anything from you. I just want to help," she said, keeping her voice calm. Michael quickly stepped forward, ready to shoo the dirty child away from his son. How had she even gotten into a private hospital? Where was security? "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Michael asked, his harsh tone betraying days of pent-up anxiety. "My name is Emily Grace. My grandmother works here cleaning the night shift. I wait for her to finish," the girl replied, unshaken by the businessman's imposing presence. Ethan abruptly stood from his chair. "My mom is dying, and you come here pretending to care just to get money." "That's not true," Emily Grace said, reaching into the pocket of her faded blouse and pulling out a small wooden rosary, so worn the details were barely visible. "This was my mother's. It's the only valuable thing I have." "I don't want your money." Michael studied the simple object in the girl's small hands. There was something in the way she held that rosary that made him hesitate before sending her away. "Where's your mom?" Ethan asked, his anger giving way to curiosity. Emily Grace lowered her eyes. "She left when I was 5. She got very sick and couldn't take care of me anymore. My grandmother Ruth raised me after that." The silence that followed was broken by the arrival of an elderly black woman with graying hair, dressed in the hospital's blue cleaning staff uniform. Ms. Ruth looked to be in her 60s, but her steps were steady and determined. "Emily Grace, what are you doing bothering these people?" Ms. Ruth said, visibly embarrassed. "1,000 apologies, sir. She shouldn't be here." Michael was about to say something sharp when his phone rang. It was his office, about business matters that couldn't wait, even in this situation. He stepped away to answer, leaving the children and the older woman behind. "Don't worry, Ms. Ruth," Ethan said, surprising himself with his own kindness. "She wasn't bothering me." Ms. Ruth studied the boy carefully. She had cleaned these halls for years and knew the Thompson family well. She knew about the accident, the worries, the tension hanging over everyone. "How's your mother, dear?" she asked, her voice full of genuine concern. Ethan felt the tears return. "The doctors say she might never wake up." Emily Grace slowly moved closer and, without asking permission, sat down beside him. "Do you want me to tell you a story? My grandmother always says stories help when we're really sad." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Ethan looked at her, uncertain. Part of him wanted to send her away, but there was something comforting about the presence of that strange girl. "What kind of story?" he asked, wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his expensive shirt. "A story about a very brave woman who never gave up fighting, even when everything seemed lost," said Emily Grace, interlacing her fingers. "My grandmother told me about her many times." Ms. Ruth smiled sadly, recognizing who her granddaughter was talking about. "It was about my mother," Emily Grace continued. "She worked at a textile factory here on the east side. Every day she woke up at 4 in the morning to get to work by 6. The pay was little, but she always said no matter how hard life got, there was always a reason to keep going." Ethan listened in silence, momentarily forgetting his own pain. One day, she found out she was very sick. The doctors told her she needed to stop working, but she had a young daughter to raise alone. So she kept working, even when she was so tired she could barely stand. What happened to her? Asked Ethan, already drawn into the story. Emily Grace looked down at her hands. She fought for 4 years, 4 years of working, taking care of me, trying to stay strong. But one day she looked me in the eyes and said she had to leave for a while, that Grandma Ruth would take care of me until she came back. And did she come back? No, Emily Grace whispered. But before she left, she taught me something very important. She said a person's strength isn't about never falling, but about always getting back up, and that when we pray for someone, we share the strength we have. Ms. Ruth discreetly wiped away a tear. That girl had inherited the generous heart of the daughter she'd lost. Michael returned from his phone call and found a scene he hadn't expected. His son talking calmly with the poor girl and the cleaning lady. For a moment, he hesitated to interrupt. "Ethan, we need to go," he said, his voice softer than before. "Dad, this is Emily Grace," said Ethan, standing up. "She told me a really beautiful story." Michael looked at the girl again. There was something about her that unsettled him, a dignity that didn't match her torn clothes. "Thank you for your kindness," he said, surprising himself, "but now we need to go home." In the days that followed, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the story Emily Grace had told him. He started looking for her in the hospital hallways during his nightly visits with his father, but he never found her. A week later, when Michael was talking to the doctor about Jennifer's condition, Ethan wandered off to explore the hospital. That's when he found Emily Grace sitting alone in the small chapel on the first floor. "Hi," he said, approaching slowly. She turned, surprised. "Hi. You shouldn't be here alone." "My dad's talking to the doctor," Ethan explained, sitting beside her. "What are you doing?" "Praying for your mother," she answered simply. Ethan was silent for a moment. "You don't even really know me. Why would you do that?" Emily Grace looked at him with those dark, sincere eyes. "Because you're hurting. And when someone hurts, it doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, known or unknown. Pain is the same for everyone." "I'm scared," Ethan confessed, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "Scared of being alone. My dad's always working. He barely talks to me. If my mum, if she doesn't come back, I'll really be alone." Emily Grace reached out and gently touched his arm. "You'll never be alone if you carry the people you love in your heart. I never knew my father, and my mother left when I was little, but I carry them both with me always." Note: the translation strictly follows the provided cultural mappings and instructions, maintaining the original structure, tone, and emotional depth while adapting names and locations appropriately. "And now I carry you too." "What do you mean?" "When we care about someone, that person becomes a part of us forever. I care about you and your mother. So you're both here," she said, touching her chest, "even when I'm not around." Ethan felt a strange sense of comfort he hadn't experienced in weeks. "My mom always said making friends was easy, but finding people who truly cared was rare," he said. "I think you're one of those rare people." Emily Grace smiled, the first genuine smile Ethan had seen from her. "Can I be your friend then?" "Yes," he replied, feeling as if a weight had lifted from his shoulders. In the following days, Ethan began looking for Emily Grace whenever he went to the hospital. She was always there during the late hours, waiting for Ms. Ruth to finish work. They talked about everything: the school Ethan attended in the Upper East Side, the books Emily Grace read at the public library, the dreams they had for the future. "I want to be a doctor when I grow up," Emily Grace said one night as they walked through the empty hospital corridors. "Why?" "Because I want to help people like your mum. I want to find ways to heal people other doctors think are beyond saving." Ethan was struck by the determination in her voice. "But becoming a doctor costs a lot of money. How will you manage?" Emily Grace shrugged. "My grandmother always says that when you truly want something and are willing to work for it, life finds a way. I'll study hard, get scholarships, work. It'll work out." "I could help," Ethan blurted out. "My dad has a lot of money. He could pay for your studies." Emily Grace stopped walking and looked at him seriously. "Thank you, Ethan, but I need to do it on my own. Otherwise it won't mean anything." It was during this conversation that Michael found them. He had finished his meeting with the doctors early and was looking for Ethan when he heard voices in the hallway. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" he called, walking quickly toward them. "Dad, I was talking to Emily Grace," Ethan said, unshaken. Michael looked at the girl with renewed suspicion. "You again? What are you trying to get from my son?" "Dad, she's not trying to get anything," Ethan protested. "We're friends." "Friends?" Michael laughed bitterly. "Ethan, you're so naive. People like her always want something. Let's go." Emily Grace remained calm despite Michael's rudeness. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concern, but I promise I don't want anything from your son, except his friendship." "Of course not," Michael said sarcastically. "And I suppose you just happened to meet here." "Actually, sir, I live here," Emily Grace replied calmly. Michael stopped. "What do you mean you live here?" "My grandmother works the overnight cleaning shift. Since our home is far and transportation is dangerous at night, the hospital lets me wait here until she finishes. I sleep in the waiting room chairs." Michael felt a pang of something he didn't want to acknowledge as guilt. "That's against the rules," he said, trying to maintain authority. "Actually, it's not," a woman's voice interjected. They all turned to see Nurse Sarah approaching. She was a woman in her 40s, with brown hair tied in a bun and a kind smile that could calm even the most difficult patients. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," she said. "The hospital administration has a special arrangement with some overnight staff. When there are safety concerns with transportation, we allow family members to wait here." Michael felt disarmed by the information. "And you let her wander the hallways." "Emily Grace isn't wandering around," Sarah explained patiently. "She has permission to use the library, the chapel, and the common areas. She's very respectful and never caused any trouble." "It's different than what I imagined," Michael admitted reluctantly. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. "Dad, Emily Grace has helped me so much these past few weeks," Ethan said. "She's made me feel less alone." Michael looked at his son and saw something he hadn't seen in a long time, a bit of peace on the boy's face. "All right," he said with a sigh, "but I don't want you two walking around the hospital unsupervised." "I can keep an eye on them when I'm on duty," Sarah offered. Emily Grace is a very responsible girl. In the weeks that followed, an unusual routine settled in. Michael would arrive at the hospital after dinner to see Jennifer and allow Ethan to spend time with Emily Grace under Sarah's supervision. He watched them from a distance, still wary but unable to deny that the girl's presence had changed his son for the better. Ethan had stopped crying constantly. He ate better, slept better, and even started taking an interest in his studies again. Emily Grace helped him with homework at the small table in the hospital library, and in return, he told her stories about places he'd visited on family trips. "Have you ever been to the beach?" Ethan asked one evening. "No," Emily Grace replied, "but my grandmother told me what it's like. She said it's like a huge desert, only instead of hot sand, there's cool sand and blue water that stretches farther than the eye can see. When my mum gets better, I'll ask my dad to take you and your grandmother to our beach house in the Hamptons," Ethan said excitedly. Emily Grace smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "That would be really nice, but I don't think your dad would ever agree." "Why not? He's starting to like you." "He is?" "He is. The other day, he asked Nurse Sarah about your grades at school, and yesterday he brought 2 sandwiches from the hospital for dinner, even though he usually only buys 1. Emily Grace looked surprised. "Really? Really? My dad isn't a bad person. He just gets really worried about everything since my mom got sick." It was during this conversation that they were interrupted by commotion in the hallway. Alarms were blaring and doctors were rushing toward the ICU. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, jumping to his feet. Sarah came running in. "Ethan, I need you to stay here with Emily Grace. Your dad is talking to the doctors." "Is it about my mum?" he asked, panic creeping into his voice. "Just stay here. I'll be back in a few minutes," Sarah said before hurrying off. Ethan began pacing, his hands shaking. "She got worse. I know she got worse. What if she... Ethan, breathe." Emily Grace said, standing up and holding his arms. "Breathe with me, slowly." I can't. He was starting to hyperventilate. Emily Grace made him sit and knelt in front of him. "Look at me, just look at me," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "Now breathe with me. In, hold, out." She breathed with him until the panic subsided. "Better?" she asked. Ethan nodded, still trembling slightly. "How did you learn to do that?" "My grandmother taught me. When my mum got really sick, I had panic attacks every night. Grandma Ruth taught me that breathing is the one thing you can control when everything else feels out of control." 20 minutes later, Michael appeared in the library. His face was pale, but there was no despair in his eyes. "Ethan, I need to talk to you," he said, sitting down beside his son. "Is it about Mom? Your mother had some complications, but the doctors managed to stabilize her. She's not worse, just different." "What do you mean, different?" Michael took a deep breath. "The doctors want to change the treatment approach. They think she might need a different kind of stimulation to wake up. Something more personal." "What does that mean?" "It means they want us to spend more time talking to her, sharing stories, recalling memories, playing music she loved. Anything that might trigger a reaction." Ethan looked at Emily Grace and then at his father. "Can Emily Grace help?" Michael hesitated. "How?" "She's really good at telling stories, and she knows how to talk to people who are sad. Maybe she could talk to Mom." Michael looked at Emily Grace for the first time, truly seeing her as a person, not just an inconvenience. "Would you do that?" he asked. "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "I want to help." That night, for the first time since the accident, Emily Grace entered the ICU. Jennifer Thompson lay in bed, connected to machines, but her face looked peaceful, as if she were just in a deep sleep. "Hello, Ms. Jennifer," Emily Grace said softly, stepping closer. "My name is Emily Grace. I'm Ethan's friend." She sat in the chair beside the bed and began speaking as if talking to an old friend. "Ethan's told me so much about you. He said you make the best fudge in the world and always let him lick the spoon. He also said you sing beautifully, and that sometimes the two of you sing along in the car." Michael and Ethan watched from the doorway, struck by Emily Grace's ease. "I want you to know how brave Ethan is. He's been so worried about you, but he hasn't missed a single day visiting. Every day he sits by your bed and tells you about school, his friends, and the plans you two have for when you come home." Emily Grace gently took Jennifer's hand. "I know it's hard to come back when you're resting. Sometimes we get so tired we just want to sleep forever. But Ethan needs you. He told me you taught him to be kind, to care about others, and not to judge people before really knowing them." Michael felt a tightness in his chest hearing those words. "He's all those things, Miss Jennifer. Even though he's so young and scared, he's been kind to me from the start. He could have ignored me or treated me badly because I'm different, but he didn't. That's because you taught him well." Emily Grace kept talking for another 15 minutes, sharing stories of her friendship with Ethan, their conversations, and the dreams they'd talked about. When she finished, she stood and gently kissed Jennifer's forehead. "Come back soon, Ms. Jennifer. There are so many people here who love you." As they left the ICU, Michael was visibly moved. "Thank you," he said to Emily Grace. That was really beautiful what you did." "I just told the truth," she replied. "Ethan really is special." Michael looked at his son and for the first time in weeks smiled. "Yes, he is." In the days that followed, Emily Grace kept visiting Jennifer. She told stories, sang songs she'd learned from Ms. Ruth, and simply talked as if Jennifer could hear her. Ethan sometimes joined in, other times just listened, amazed by how easily Emily Grace spoke of hope, even in the midst of hardship. A week after that first visit, something unexpected happened. Michael was alone with Jennifer, reading some work reports aloud, as the doctors had suggested, when he noticed her fingers move slightly. "Jennifer," he called, dropping the papers. "Jennifer, can you hear me?" Her fingers moved again, almost imperceptibly. Michael ran to call the doctors. After a series of tests, they confirmed that Jennifer was showing signs of increased brain activity. It wasn't a guarantee she would wake up, but it was the first positive sign in months. What changed? Michael asked Dr. Reynolds, the neurologist in charge. It's hard to say for sure. Sometimes changes in the patient's emotional environment can influence recovery. Has your wife been receiving more positive stimulation lately? Michael thought of Emily Grace's visits, the conversations she and Ethan had by Jennifer's bedside, the more hopeful atmosphere that had settled in the room. Yes, he said. Yes, she has. When Michael shared the news with Ethan and Emily Grace, their reaction was pure joy. I knew it, Ethan said, hugging Emily Grace. I knew your stories would help. Emily Grace was radiant but tried to stay grounded. We still don't know if she'll wake up completely, but it's a good sign. It's a great sign, Michael corrected. And I have to admit, Emily Grace, you've brought something special to our family these past few weeks. Emily Grace looked at him in surprise. It was the first time he'd spoken to her with real warmth. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Call me Michael, he said, and I'd like to talk with you and your grandmother about a few things. That evening, Michael asked to meet Ms. Ruth when she arrived for work. At 11, he was waiting in the staff break room when she appeared. Good evening, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Ruth said, clearly nervous. Did Emily Grace do something wrong? No, Michael said quickly. Quite the opposite. Your granddaughter has been a blessing to my family, and I'd like to discuss how I can repay that. Ms. Ruth sat cautiously. Sir, we don't need anything. Emily Grace became friends with your son because she wanted to, not expecting anything in return. I know, Michael said, and that only makes her actions more admirable, but I'd like to help. Ethan told me Emily Grace wants to be a doctor. How are her grades in school? She's the top student in her class, Ms. Ruth said proudly. She's always been very bright. But sir, we don't want charity. I'm not offering charity, Michael said. I'm offering an opportunity. What if I paid for Emily Grace to attend a private school? A good one that could better prepare her for medical school. Ms. Ruth was silent for a long moment. Why? She finally asked. Because your granddaughter taught me something important about hasty judgments, and because she made my son smile again, and because maybe, if she becomes a doctor, she can help other families like she's helped mine. This would change her whole life, Ms. Ruth whispered. I hope so, but the decision is yours. When Ms. Ruth told Emily Grace about the offer, the girl's reaction was unexpected. I can't accept, she said. Why not, child? Because it would seem like I got close to Ethan expecting something. And that's not how it was. Ms. Ruth sat beside her granddaughter on the small bed in the room they shared at a boarding house on the east side. Emily Grace, sometimes life gives us gifts we didn't expect. That doesn't lessen the value of our friendship or our good deeds. But I want to make it on my own. And you will. A better school won't do the work for you. You'll still have to study, work hard, fight for your dreams. School is just a tool like a hammer is to a carpenter. Emily Grace grew thoughtful. Do you think I should accept? I think you should talk to Mr. Michael and Ethan. They can help you understand that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The next day, Emily Grace sought out Michael at the hospital. Mr. Michael, may I speak with you? Of course, about what? About school. I'd like to accept your offer, but on one condition. Michael raised his eyebrows. What condition? That it's a loan. When I graduate as a doctor and start working, I'll pay everything back. Michael smiled. That's very honorable of you, Emily Grace, but it's not necessary. For me, it is, she said firmly. If I'm going to accept your help, I need to know it's an investment, not a gift. That way I can work to deserve it and one day repay it by helping others. Michael extended his hand. Then we have a deal, but with one condition of my own. What? That you stay friends with Ethan. He's never had a true friend before you. Emily Grace shook his hand, smiling. I promise that with all my heart. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 2 weeks later, Emily Grace began studying at St. Benedict Academy, one of the best private schools in New York City. The transition wasn't easy. She had to wake up at 5 in the morning to take 2 buses and arrive at school by 7. Her uniforms were new, but she still carried the old, worn-out backpack she'd used at public school. On the first day, some classmates made remarks about her background, but Emily Grace faced it all with the dignity she'd learned from Ms. Ruth. She wasn't ashamed of where she came from. She was determined to prove she deserved to be there. "How was school?" Ethan asked when they met at the hospital that week. "Different," Emily Grace admitted. "Much harder, but I like the challenges." "Did anyone treat you badly?" "A few, but I don't care. My grandmother always said that when you're in a place you weren't meant to be, you have two choices: prove you belong or give up. I chose the first." "And your grades?" Emily Grace smiled. "Second best in the class on the first math test." "Only second?" "The top student has studied at that school their whole life, but I'll catch up," she said with determination. Meanwhile, Jennifer continued showing small signs of improvement. Her fingers moved more frequently, and sometimes it seemed she tried to open her eyes when she heard familiar voices. Dr. Reynolds was cautiously optimistic. "Mrs. Thompson is responding very well to stimulation. Keep doing what you're doing," he told Michael. "How much longer do you think she might stay like this?" Michael asked. "It's impossible to predict. Could be days, weeks, months, or she might wake up tomorrow. The human brain is very complex." Michael nodded, used to these vague answers after months of similar questions. That evening, he found Ethan and Emily Grace in the hospital chapel. They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "Mind if I join you?" Michael asked. "Of course, Dad," Ethan said, making room on the bench. The three sat quietly for a few minutes, the weight of the past months hanging over them. "Emily Grace," Michael finally said, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you approach Ethan that first day? You didn't know us. You could have just ignored a boy crying in the hallway." Emily Grace thought for a moment before answering. "My mother used to say that pain recognizes pain. When I saw Ethan crying, I recognized the kind of sadness he was feeling. It was the same sadness I felt when my mother got sick. And you thought you could help? I thought I could try. Sometimes we can't solve someone's problem, but we can make them feel less alone while they go through it." Michael looked at that 12-year-old girl with renewed admiration. "Have you ever thought that maybe you're the one saving our family, not the other way around?" Emily Grace blushed. "I'm not saving anyone. I'm just being a friend." "Sometimes," said Michael, "being a friend is the most powerful way to save someone." 3 months passed. Emily Grace was adjusting well to her new school, and her grades remained excellent. She had made a few friends, especially a girl named Jessica, who didn't care about Emily Grace's background and admired her determination. Ethan was doing better too. He had regained his interest in sports and even joined the school's soccer team. But every single day, without fail, he and Emily Grace met at the hospital to visit Jennifer. It was during one of these visits that the miracle happened. Emily Grace was telling Jennifer about a school play they were rehearsing when she noticed something different. Jennifer's eyes were slightly open. "Miss Jennifer," she whispered, "can you hear me?" Jennifer's eyes slowly focused on Emily Grace's face. Her lips moved almost imperceptibly. "Ethan," Jennifer managed to whisper with great effort. Emily Grace began to cry and ran to call the doctors. Within minutes, the ICU was full of professionals checking Jennifer's vitals and running tests. "Mom," Ethan cried when Michael rushed him to the hospital. "Mom, you're back." Jennifer smiled weakly and managed to squeeze her son's hand. My boy," she managed to say. The recovery process was slow. Jennifer had to relearn many basic things: how to swallow, how to move her arms with coordination, how to form complete sentences. But she was determined to return to normal life as quickly as possible. During this time, she got to know Emily Grace better. "So you're the girl who took care of my son," Jennifer said during one of the first long conversations she could manage. "He took care of me too," Emily Grace replied. "We took care of each other. Michael told me about school, about how well you're doing. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, Miss Jennifer, and thank you for raising such a special son. Ethan taught me that people can be kind even when they're hurting." Jennifer held Emily Grace's hand. "You've taught this family some important things too. Michael has been different since you came into our lives." "How so?" "He's always been a good man, but sometimes he forgot to show it. You reminded him that the greatest wealth is in the heart. 6 months after Jennifer woke up, she was almost fully recovered. There were minor lingering effects. She tired more easily and sometimes struggled to find specific words, but the doctors were impressed with her progress. The Thompson family threw a celebration party at their home in the Upper East Side. Emily Grace and Ms. Ruth were the guests of honor. It was the first time they had ever been in such a luxurious house, but the Thompsons made sure they felt at home. "This is the Emily Grace I told you about," Ethan said to Jennifer, who was finally meeting the girl she'd heard so much about. "So you're my savior," Jennifer said, hugging Emily Grace. "No, Miss Jennifer, the doctors saved you, I just talked." "Sometimes," Jennifer replied, "talking is the most important medicine." During the party, Michael made an announcement. "I'd like to say a few words," he said, asking for everyone's attention, family, close friends, and some hospital staff who had become dear during those difficult months. "These past months have taught me so much about what truly matters in life. I nearly lost the most important person to me," he said, looking at Jennifer, "and during that time of fear and uncertainty, 2 very special people came into our lives." He turned to Emily Grace and Ms. Ruth. "Ms. Ruth, your dedication to your work and kindness toward everyone at the hospital is inspiring. And Emily Grace," he paused, visibly emotional, "you showed us that true nobility has nothing to do with money or social status. It's about character. That's why I'd like to announce I'm creating a foundation in my family's name. The Hope Foundation will help underprivileged children with academic potential gain access to quality education." The applause was warm, but Michael wasn't finished. "And I'd like to ask Emily Grace to be the foundation's first official ambassador. When she becomes a doctor, we hope she can help other children achieve their dreams, just as she achieved hers." Emily Grace was crying, but managed to reply, "I accept, and I promise to honor this trust." Ms. Ruth was also in tears. "My granddaughter has always been special," she said, "but you helped her shine even brighter." That night, after the party ended and everyone left, the Thompson family, Emily Grace, and Ms. Ruth stayed talking in the living room. "You know what's funny?" Ethan said. "That first day at the hospital, I thought Emily Grace was going to ask me for money or something. And I thought you'd call security to kick me out," Emily Grace laughed. "And I thought she was an opportunist," Michael admitted. "How wrong I was." "Sometimes," Jennifer said, "the best things in life come when we least expect them, and in ways we never imagined." 2 years passed. Emily Grace remained one of the top students at St. Benedict Academy and had become class president. She organized study groups that included students from different social backgrounds, promoting integration at school. Ethan had entered his teenage years and was developing an interest in engineering. He and Emily Grace remained best friends, even though their social circles had diverged due to their age difference. Jennifer had fully returned to work as an interior designer, now focusing on projects to humanize hospital spaces, inspired by her own experience. Michael had become a more socially conscious businessman. The Hope Foundation had already helped over 50 children, and he found this work more fulfilling than any previous venture. Ms. Ruth had become the supervisor of the hospital's night cleaning staff and was respected by all the employees. She and Emily Grace had moved into a small but comfortable apartment near the school, which Michael had offered as part of the loan Emily Grace insisted on maintaining. It was an ordinary October day when Emily Grace made a discovery that would change everything again. She was in the hospital library, studying for a biology test, when she accidentally knocked over some papers on the table. As she picked them up, she noticed one was an old medical report. Normally, she wouldn't look, respecting patient privacy, but the name at the top made her freeze. Grace Miller Williams. Her heart raced. Grace was her mother's name, and Williams was the last name Ms. Ruth used. She looked around to make sure she was alone and read the report. It was a hospital discharge summary from 7 years ago. A 28-year-old woman had been treated for severe pneumonia, complicated by malnutrition. The report mentioned that the patient had left the hospital against medical advice because she couldn't afford the prolonged treatment needed. Emily Grace felt as if the world was spinning. That hospital. Her mother had been treated at the same hospital where she now spent her nights. With trembling hands, she took a photo of the report with the cell phone Michael had given her and ran to find Ms. Ruth. "Grandma!" she called, finding Ms. Ruth in the staff locker room. "What is it, child? You're pale." Emily Grace showed her the photo of the report. "It was here. Mum was treated here, at this hospital." Ms. Ruth sank heavily into a chair. "How did you find this out?" "I stumbled upon the report by accident." "Grandma, why did you never tell me?" Ms. Ruth was silent for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. "Because it was too painful. Your mother was in the charity ward. She was so weak, so sick. The doctors said she needed at least 2 more weeks of treatment, but our bill was already too high." "What happened?" "She left the hospital against their orders. Said she couldn't let you and me go without because of her. 2 weeks later, she left us." Emily Grace sat beside her grandmother. "Do you think if she had stayed in the hospital?" "We don't know," Ms. Ruth said firmly, "and there's no use dwelling on it. What matters is that you're here, strong and healthy, making your mother proud." "But Grandma, did you start working here because of this?" Ms. Ruth nodded. "I wanted to be close to the place where your mother had fought. It felt like a way to keep her memory alive. And also, I always hoped that maybe one day I could help other families going through what we went through." Emily Grace hugged her grandmother, finally understanding why Ms. Ruth always spoke of the hospital with such affection, despite all the pain tied to the place. "It was fate," she said. "That's why I reached out to Ethan that day. Because I was in the place where my mother had fought and I recognized his pain." "Maybe," Ms. Ruth said. "Or maybe your mother was somehow guiding you to help that family, since she couldn't be helped herself." That night, Emily Grace told the Thompsons everything. Their reaction was complete surprise and emotion. "So your mother was treated right here," Jennifer said, visibly moved. "Emily Grace, this explains so much." "How so?" "The way you always seemed at home in this hospital. The way you knew exactly what to say to comfort me when I was unconscious. It was like you understood this place on a deep level." Michael was thoughtful. "Emily Grace, do you remember anything from that time when your mother was hospitalized?" "A few things. I remember sitting in the waiting room with my grandmother for hours. I remember doctors in white coats saying things I didn't understand. And I remember seeing my mother so thin and weak in a bed like Mrs. Jennifer's." "You were 5, Ethan said. "It must have been terrifying." "It was, but my grandmother always told me the doctors were angels who helped people get better. That's why I always wanted to be a doctor." Jennifer took Emily Grace's hand. "Your mother would be so proud of who you've become, and I'm sure she'd be happy knowing you helped our family the way you did." "Mrs. Jennifer, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Can you tell me what it was like when you were in a coma? Could you hear people?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "It was strange. Sometimes I heard voices as if they were very far away. Other times the voices seemed clearly close. But whenever you spoke to me, Emily Grace, I felt an immense peace. It was as if your voice reminded me there were reasons to come back." "Do you remember anything specific?" I said. "I remember you telling me about your friendship with Ethan. I remember you saying he was brave and kind. And I remember once when you said I had to come back because my family needed me. At that moment, I managed to move my fingers for the first time." Emily Grace began to cry. "I always spoke imagining that maybe my mother could hear me somehow. And I ended up speaking to you the same way. It was Michael who broke the emotional silence that followed." "Emily Grace, I'd like to propose something." "What?" "That your mother be honored at the Hope Foundation. We could create a special wing to help families who can't afford prolonged medical treatments. It would be the Grace Williams Wing." "Mr. Michael. And when you graduate as a doctor, if you'd like, you could work overseeing that wing, so other children won't have to go through what you did." Emily Grace looked at Ms. Ruth, who was crying with emotion. "It would be an honor," she said. "My mother always said that every person we help is a seed of hope we plant in the world." 3 years had passed since that discovery. Emily Grace was in her final year of high school and had been accepted into Columbia University's medical school, one of the most competitive in the country. The Grace Williams Wing had opened 2 years earlier and had already helped over 200 families. The program offered not just financial support, but also emotional and social assistance for vulnerable families dealing with serious illnesses. Ethan had grown up and was in his second year of high school. He and Emily Grace remained close even though their academic paths had diverged. He had chosen to study environmental engineering, inspired by the social work he'd witnessed through the foundation. "Are you nervous about starting med school?" he asked during one of their regular conversations at the hospital. "Very," admitted Emily Grace, "but I'm also excited. I'll finally be able to help people the way I've always wanted." "You already help people, Grace. Look at everything you've done for our family, for all the families at the foundation. It's different. I want to be able to look at someone who's sick and have the knowledge to truly make a difference." "Like the difference you made for my mom?" Emily Grace smiled. "Your mom taught me that sometimes the most important medicine doesn't come from pills or surgeries. It comes from genuinely caring about people." Jennifer had become a sort of adoptive mother to Emily Grace. They met regularly for lunch to talk about life, dreams, and challenges. "You know," Jennifer said during one of these lunches, "your coming into our lives changed all of us for the better." "How so?" "Michael became more human, more connected to purposes bigger than just making money. Ethan learned to value true friendships and care about social issues. And I learned that life can change in an instant, and that we should cherish every moment with the people we love." "You all changed my life too," said Emily Grace. "You gave me opportunities I never would have had on my own." "No," Jennifer corrected. "We just provided some tools. All the determination, all the intelligence, all the character you have, that was in you from the start. My grandmother always says that too. Your grandmother is a very wise woman and very brave for raising such a special girl on her own." Ms. Ruth had become a beloved figure, not only at the hospital, but throughout the surrounding community. She had created a support group for hospital staff who were raising grandchildren or great-grandchildren, offering both practical and emotional support. "Grandma's getting famous," Emily Grace teased. "I'm just doing what I've always done, taking care of people," Ms. Ruth replied. "The difference is now I have more resources to help." "You don't regret anything? All the hardships we went through?" Ms. Ruth looked at her granddaughter with love. "How could I regret the path that brought us here? If your mother hadn't gotten sick, maybe we never would have met the Thompsons. If I hadn't started working at the hospital, you never would have met Ethan that day. Do you think Mom would be proud?" "I'm absolutely certain. Your mother dreamed of being a nurse but never had the chance to study. Seeing you become a doctor would have been the greatest pride of her life." On Emily Grace's high school graduation day, the entire Thompson family was there. Michael had insisted on throwing a party in her honor. "I'm so proud of you," he said during his speech. "When you came into our lives, I never imagined I was meeting someone who would become like a daughter to me." "Like a sister to me," Ethan added. "And the daughter I never had," Jennifer said, emotional. Emily Grace was crying with joy. "You're my second family. And you've taught me that family isn't just who you're born with, it's who chooses to stay with you." Ms. Ruth watched it all with deep satisfaction. At 68, she had raised a granddaughter who was about to achieve dreams that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. "Grace," she whispered, looking up at the sky, "our girl did it. She's going to be a doctor just like you wanted to be." The party was joyful, but there was also a hint of nostalgia in the air. Emily Grace was about to begin a new chapter, and everyone knew things would be different from then on. "Promise you won't forget us when you're a famous doctor," Ethan joked. "Impossible," Emily Grace replied. "You're part of who I am. Without you, I wouldn't be the person I am today." "And without you," Michael said, "we wouldn't have learned what truly matters in life." During her first years of medical school, Emily Grace faced immense challenges. The program was much harder than she'd imagined, and she had to work twice as hard to keep up with classmates who'd had more intensive preparation. But she persevered, always remembering her mother's words about never giving up and the lessons in strength she'd learned from Ms. Ruth. Ethan, now in engineering school, remained her confidant and source of support. "Sometimes I don't think I can do this," she confessed during a moment of doubt in her third year. "You said the same thing about prep school freshman year," Ethan reminded her, "and you ended up one of the top students." "Medicine is different. The responsibility is so much greater." People's lives will be in my hands. And there are no better hands for that responsibility, Jennifer said, joining them for lunch. Emily Grace, you have something no school can teach, a genuine calling to care for people. How can you be so sure? Because I saw you take care of me when I was in a coma. You were 12 and already knew instinctively how to comfort someone in pain. During her 4th year, Emily Grace began her clinical rotations. That's when she had her first real experience being on the doctor's side of a hospital. Her first rotation was in pediatrics, and she immediately stood out for the caring way she treated children and their families. You have a natural gift, said Dr. Elizabeth Parker, the internship supervisor. Children trust you instantly. I try to remember what it was like to be on the other side, as the patient or the patient's family, explained Emily Grace. That perspective is rare among medical students. Many focus only on the technical side and forget the human aspect. It was during this internship that Emily Grace had an experience that deeply affected her. An 8-year-old girl was hospitalized with leukemia, and her parents were desperate because they couldn't afford the full treatment. Doctor, the girl's mother said, do you know any way to get help? I work as a cleaner, but the money isn't enough. Emily Grace felt a wave of recognition. That situation was exactly what her own mother had faced years before. Let me see what I can do, she said. That night, Emily Grace called Michael. Uncle Michael, she had started calling him that years ago, I need your help with something. Of course. What do you need? Emily Grace told him about the girl and her family. Do you think the Grace Williams wing could help with this case? Of course, Michael replied immediately. That's what it's there for. Send me the family's details and I'll arrange everything tomorrow. 2 weeks later, the girl was receiving full treatment and her parents were getting support from the foundation to cover their expenses during the hospitalization. How can I thank you? The girl's father asked Emily Grace. No need to thank me. Just take good care of your daughter, and if you can someday, help another family in need. It was at that moment Emily Grace fully understood the impact her personal story would have on her medical career. She wasn't just a student preparing to be a doctor, she was someone who deeply understood what it meant to be on the other side. During her 5th year, Emily Grace interned in the ICU at Mercy Medical Center, the same place where Jennifer had spent months in a coma. Working there every day brought back powerful memories and renewed motivation. It's strange being here as a medical student, she remarked to Nurse Sarah, who still worked in the ICU and remembered her well. Actually, it's beautiful, Sarah replied. Seeing you here on the doctor's side caring for other patients, it's like the circle has closed perfectly. I think about that every day. If my mother were here to see. She is seeing, Sarah said with conviction, and she's very proud. During that internship, Emily Grace cared for a 10-year-old boy who had suffered a serious accident. The boy's parents reminded her so much of Michael and Jennifer during their difficult time. How is he? The mother asked desperately. He's stable, Emily Grace replied, using the same gentle but honest tone she had learned to value years before. But it's still too early to know about a full recovery. Will he be okay? We'll do everything in our power, Emily Grace promised. And you're not alone in this. We'll be here to support you every step of the way. That night she told Ethan about the case. It must be hard being on the other side now, he said. It is, and it isn't. It's hard seeing families suffer. But it's amazing to actually be able to help, to have the knowledge to make a difference. You've always made a difference, Emily, just in different ways. But now I can really save lives. You saved our lives 8 years ago, Ethan reminded her. Maybe not in the medical sense, but in every other way that matters. The 6th and final year of medical school passed quickly. Emily Grace had decided to specialize in pediatrics, inspired by all the experiences she had caring for children and their families. Are you sure about pediatrics? Asked Jennifer. It must be emotionally very heavy. It is heavy, admitted Emily Grace, but it's also where I feel I can make the most difference. Children trust more, recover faster when they feel loved and safe. Like you when you were little? Like I wish I had felt when I was little. I don't want any sick child to feel alone or scared if I can help it. The graduation day was emotional for the entire extended family Emily Grace had built. Ms. Ruth, now 73, sat in the front row, tears of pride streaming down her face. "Dr. Emily Grace Williams," said the dean when it was her turn to receive her diploma. The entire auditorium applauded, but no one clapped louder than the Thompsons. Michael was openly crying, remembering the 12-year-old girl he had met 8 years earlier. "I'm so proud of you," he said, hugging her after the ceremony. "We all are," added Jennifer. "Grandma," Emily Grace said, embracing Ms. Ruth, "we did it. You did it, my dear, you did it." That evening, during the graduation party Michael had organized, Emily Grace gave a speech that moved everyone. "8 years ago, I was a lost girl wandering the halls of a hospital, trying to find a way to help someone who was suffering. Today I graduate as a doctor, ready to dedicate my life to caring for people. This journey was only possible because of so many special people. My grandmother Ruth, who raised me with love and sacrifice. My mother Grace, who, even though she's no longer here, taught me about strength and determination. And my chosen family," she looked at the Thompsons, "who showed me that kindness and generosity can transform lives. But most of all, I want to thank an 11-year-old boy who was crying alone in a hospital and who accepted the friendship of a strange girl. Ethan, you were my first patient, even if you didn't know it. And you taught me that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about genuinely caring for people." Ethan was too emotional to respond with words, so he simply hugged her. 6 months later, Dr. Emily Grace Williams began her pediatric residency at Mercy Medical Center. It was a full circle. She was back where it all began, but now as a doctor. On her first day, she walked the same halls she had once wandered as a frightened girl 8 years earlier. Now, she wore the white coat she had always admired and carried with her all the knowledge and experience she had gained. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Reynolds, now her supervisor. "A little," she admitted, "but also very excited. You'll do great here. Everyone already knows your story and is eager to work with you." Emily Grace's first patient as a resident was a 9-year-old girl admitted with severe pneumonia. When she entered the room, she found the girl's mother crying by the bed. "Doctor," the mother said, "will my daughter be okay?" Emily Grace remembered all the time she had asked the same question about her own mother and later about Jennifer. "We'll take very good care of her," Emily Grace promised, "and we'll do everything in our power to help her recover fully. What if we can't afford everything?" "Don't worry about that now," Emily Grace said gently. "Let's focus on your daughter's recovery. We'll figure out the rest later." That night, when her shift ended, Emily Grace called Ethan. "How was Dr. Emily Grace's first day?" he teased. "Amazing," she replied. "It's frightening, but mostly incredible. Tell me everything." As Emily Grace recounted her first day, she realized she had found her place in the world, not just as a doctor, but as someone who could use her own story of overcoming adversity to help other families through the hardest moments of their lives. "You know what's most beautiful?" she said to Ethan. "What?" "I've managed to bring all the parts of my life together. The girl who lost her mother, the girl who was helped by a generous family, the student who fought to achieve her dreams, and now the doctor who can make a difference in people's lives." "You've always made a difference, Emily, since the very first day I met you. But now I can do it in a way that honors my mother's memory and repays everything you've all done for me." 2 years had passed. Emily Grace had become one of the most respected residents at the hospital. Her combination of technical knowledge and human sensitivity made her special to both colleagues and patients and their families. Ethan had graduated with a degree in engineering and was working on environmental sustainability projects. He and Emily Grace continued to meet regularly, maintaining the friendship that had begun in pain and grown stronger over the years. "Do you remember what you said that first day in the chapel?" Ethan asked during one of their meetings. "What?" "That when we care about someone, they become a part of us forever." "I remember. I've been thinking about that. Our friendship started in a very difficult moment, but it's become one of the most important things in my life." Emily Grace smiled. "For me, too. You taught me that social differences don't matter when there's genuine affection between people. And you taught me about courage, about facing hardships without losing kindness. Jennifer and Michael Thompson had become like second parents to Emily Grace. They included her in all family celebrations and consulted her on important decisions related to the Hope Foundation. "I have a proposal for you," Michael said during dinner at the Thompsons' home. "What kind of proposal?" "The Hope Foundation is growing rapidly. We need someone to oversee the medical side of the project, someone who understands both the technical and human aspects. Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to expand the work you're already doing. You'd continue your residency, but also help develop medical support programs for families in need." Emily Grace looked at Jennifer and Ethan, who were smiling. "Did you know about this proposal?" "Of course," Jennifer said, "and we think it's perfect for you." "It would be a way to honor your mother even more directly," Ethan added. Emily Grace thought for a moment. "I accept, but on one condition." "What?" Michael asked. "That we create a specific program to support hospital staff and their families, people like my grandmother, who dedicate their lives to caring for others but sometimes need care themselves." "Perfect," Michael said. "We'll call it the Ruth Williams Program." When Ms. Ruth learned about the tribute, she wept with emotion. "I don't deserve this," she said. "Of course you do," Emily Grace replied. "You've spent your life taking care of me and then others at the hospital. It's time for others to take care of you too." 3 years later, as Emily Grace was finishing her residency, Mercy Medical Center held a special ceremony. She had been chosen as Resident of the Year, not just for her technical skill, but for her contributions to humanizing patient care. "Dr. Emily Grace Williams represents the best of modern medicine," the hospital director said during the ceremony. "She combines technical excellence with genuine compassion, reminding us all why we chose this profession." Her personal story, which began in this very hospital over 10 years ago, is an inspiration to us all. She shows us that it's possible to turn experiences of pain into motivation to help others. When it was her turn to speak, Emily Grace looked at the audience and saw all the people who had been part of her journey. Ms. Ruth, who at 76 still worked because she loved what she did. Michael and Jennifer, who had become the parents she never had. Ethan, now a successful young engineer who remained her best friend, and dozens of colleagues, patients, and families who had touched her life over the years. "When I was 12 years old," she began, "I walked into this hospital as a frightened girl who didn't understand why bad things happened to good people. Today, I leave here as a doctor, with a deep understanding that our mission isn't just to cure illnesses, but to care for people. Every patient I treated during my residency taught me something new. Every family I supported reminded me of the importance of treating not just the body, but also the heart and soul. My mother, Grace Williams, didn't get all the help she needed when she was sick, but her struggle and her courage planted a seed in me that grew into this career dedicated to helping others. My grandmother, Ruth Williams, raised me with values that allowed me to recognize kindness when I found it, even from people who seemed very different from me. And the Thompson family showed me that love and generosity can break any social barrier and create bonds that last forever. Today, when I look to the future, I see endless possibilities to keep planting seeds of hope. Every child I help recover, every family I support during tough times, every colleague I inspire to be more compassionate, all of it is a way to honor everyone who brought me here. The applause was long and heartfelt. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the ceremony, as the whole family celebrated, Ethan pulled Emily Grace aside. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "What is it?" "Open it and see." Inside the box was a golden pendant shaped like a stethoscope, but decorated with tiny hearts. "It's beautiful," said Emily Grace. "But why?" "Because you've always been a doctor at heart, long before you had the diploma. And because I want you to always remember that healing with love is what makes you special." Emily Grace hugged her friend, moved. "Thank you for everything. For being my first friend, my chosen brother, my family. Thank you for teaching me that some of life's greatest gifts come when we least expect them and from people we never imagined." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, Leave a sincere comment below. Do you think Emily Grace made the right decisions? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like the video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.